Hey all, so this week I took a little bit of an extra step before actually reporting back to you on your reading results. And that extra step I took, I hope is going to extend the life of my computer's failing battery. Which I am long overdue to replace apparently. That's something I learned this week. But other than that, everything's been going wonderfully. And as many of you guys may have heard, if you made it through the class this week, the class and the energy activation portion of our trainings, this week I'm using a deck called the Victorian Fairy Tarot. And I'm going to pause on this first card, which is actually an answer to Lexus Perkins, who you might be able to see on the other side of the screen there. Says, will Avery and I get married in what year? Because he's getting near his 30s. Oh, that's so much younger than you think it is. And I'm about to be 23 years old. I got married when I was 23 too. We are both happy. That's awesome. Congratulations. I hope he is my dream man. And actually, this card, the Nine of Autumn, I'm going to just spend a little bit longer on it with Lexus's reading with you all at the beginning of this session, because I want to just orient you to a few things that are different in the Victorian Fairy Tarot, and show you how, even though you may not, like I hadn't really read much with the Victorian Fairy Tarot until this last month when I got another Victorian Fairy Tarot deck in my collection, and I started playing around with it. So this is new to me too, and what I can show you here while we go through these readings, kind of just as an extra training, you're actually going to feel like you have a fairly firm foundation in basic tarot reading after going through all of these readings. So today, to speed things up a little bit, I'm going to try to go through the batch of reading requests that I have here, and it's fewer reading requests than I tried to do in the last couple of weeks, which is great because it was really kind of a lot to handle, and the videos were just overloading my poor little MacBook here, and I really do want to just use the MacBook for this because it's easiest on my end. So we're going to have a look at this deck, and we're going to use the opportunity of going through everyone's readings to get not only a really great basic training in the tarot for any deck you choose to read with, but you're also going to be very familiar with exactly what it means when I say things like, you can work with any tarot deck in the world if you take my trainings. Because what we do in these trainings, and you'll see this in action if you learn along with us here today in this hour or so, is how I do that, how I pick up any deck and know almost instantly what every single card in that deck is, even though I have never had this card come up in a group mini reading session before, because I've never read with this deck. I know exactly how to interpret it, even though I've never seen it before. And that's because I've got this mastery foundation in tarot knowledge. And I'm going to share a lot of that with you today so that you can do the same thing. You can go out there after this training, and if you're curious enough to find a deck for yourself that really resonates with you, that you love the illustrations or the colors or the size or the handling or the energy or whatever it is about whatever deck that really appeals to you, you're going to feel confident enough of your skills as a tarot reader right after this class with me today that you'll feel confident enough to go pick up that tarot deck and know that you will be able to read with it, even though you might not have time to read, 500 or 600 pages about that specific tarot deck. It doesn't matter, because you've got a really good foundation in the tarot, and we can translate from universal tarot language to your specific deck's tarot language fairly easily. I think most of us on the video training today will find that at the end of this session, and you'll get your cards read along the way. So it's a really hands-on, easy way to learn to read the tarot. That's what we're about to do. Okay, so a couple of things about the Nine of Autumn, and Lexis is specific here and how this translates to what you need to know about the tarot. So in the Victorian Fairy Tarot, they replace the names of the four suits, the traditional names of the four suits, with four suit names that are all their own, but make so much sense. And you can get this from just usually when you buy a tarot deck, there's a tiny little, very paperback little reader that's usually just a little bit smaller than the area of one of the tarot cards, and it's very thin. You can tuck it in with whatever you're going to use to carry your tarot cards around in. And it's just a brief introduction to what they changed up and what they did, essentially, with things like this in their specific tarot deck. So I actually have a much larger book on the Victorian Fairy Companion, but pretty easy when you have any kind of a companion book that comes with a new deck. It'll be pretty easy for you to look at the introductory, page or two of that book, and they'll tell you what they did differently, and they'll tell you how it's supposed to relate or differ from the traditional meaning. So right there, you've got a page or two to read. Maybe it'll catch you up on how to interpret their deck when you have a basic knowledge of the tarot already, and you'll be off and running. So in this page or two, which was all I had to read to get up to speed with this tarot deck, it said, well, we've replaced the four traditional suits, which are wands and cups and pentacles and swords, with energetic correlations to the four seasons of the year. And that's fascinating to me. I mean, especially since I started running the Sacred Year course this year. It's another layer of interpretation that I've never seen anyone else do to connect and correlate the seasons of the year to the four suits as those suit names. So even though I have never ever seen this card before, the Nine of Autumn, I know, just from reading that page, that they replaced the suit of Pentacles with the suit of Autumn. And this actually makes a lot of sense. The suit of Pentacles traditionally is the suit that the tarot connects to earth elementally, energetically. So all things to do with very material pieces of our existence, experiences as humans, the really tangible material stuff of life is very often included as the subject matter of the Pentacles. And in that vein, or understanding, what the creators of the Victorian Fairy Tarot have done here is, well, they've got lots of little Victorian fairy people in things like birds' nests and things, which is beautiful in the cards. But here in the suit of Autumn, we see ripening, I think they're peaches on this tree. She seems to be knitting in the middle of ripening peaches. Can you imagine the beautiful smell of that? In the fresh air and this golden light. It's obviously still warm enough. She's very comfortable. She's very well taken care of. In fact, she is so well taken care of. She's got a basket of yarn behind her there. And I'm sure she's also been helping that bird to build his nest with little pieces of yarn and scraps that she might be able to offer him. So she's being in her abundance to the point that she's also enjoying being generous and sharing with others. And these are all themes that we always see with the nines of any suit. Now, with the suit of Autumn, the abundance that we see here and the gratitude and the sharing and all of that's happening in this nine is a very earthy nine-ness. And So we see actual ripening fruit, food. It doesn't get more materially appropriate energetically than that. And the month that everything ripens in and we have our harvest, so we have our gratitude, is of course autumn. So it makes a lot of sense that you can absolutely design a deck of tarot cards and replace the pentacles with autumn just as an energy, and so on and so forth. Now, as we go through the other suits, I will connect and correlate what they do with the other suits and the traditional namings. But so here, in answer to your question, Lexus, you've probably got a good idea already, as will everyone as I sort of explain more of the tarot as we go along, what this card might be saying to you. You might also see that there isn't a big, splashy word on this that says yes or no, for that matter. And your answer definitely has a yes or a no response implied here. So I'm going to do my best to give you that yes or no answer from this card. It's a little bit more grey than that. And it always will be with tarot, and I do want to take a moment to explain that to people too. Do you get definite yes and no answers from the tarot? Yes, of course you do, but both answers would always be right. And I'm going to try to elaborate on that a little bit, just to explain something that is commonly misunderstood by a lot of people. You guys may have an understanding of this already, but maybe this will make a lot of people listening and watching right now a little bit more comfortable with the tarot to know this too, because the tarot kind of got a really bad rap of being an oracle that will foresee your destiny and your future. Like that is something that is set in stone, and it's absolutely not. What the tarot gets to show you in a really good reading is what you are on the path to probably, most likely, in all probability, manifest. This is the path that you're on. Can you change that up after you have this knowledge from a reading? Of course you can, and that's where your free will comes in. Things can also happen, but judging by how things are developing right now, what a good predictive reading will show us is what the most likely answer to your question is, and more than that, it also elaborates on that and tells us a lot about the energy of where that yes or no response sits. Why that is the answer is also pretty much explained in here. So I'm going to hesitate to guess and say, yes, this looks and feels really good for you guys as far as marriage is concerned. In what year is a little bit more difficult to tell, but I do like the idea of the 9 being a theme that might mean something here. So I'm going to teach just a little bit about how you might surmise an answer, if it feels appropriate, if it feels right, if it feels like this would have meaning for you, then it probably will. If it doesn't, you just leave it, okay? You never have to accept anything I say in any of these readings blindly. But let's see if we can do a cross sum of any of the years around where we are right now and come up with the number 9. So what do we have in the year 2017 really going on? Well, obviously there's a 7 in there that everyone sees. So maybe the answer here is 2019, when you're 25. That's a brilliant age to get married, because it gives you a couple of years to really prepare well and really get the nest ready. And here we do see people in a very comfortable nest. They know they're going to have some challenges. They know they're going to grow and challenge each other in a good marriage, in productive, good ways. But they're going to make sure they're comfortable enough together in some sort of marriage nest to properly support each other so that they can both grow and develop better by sharing their lives, rather than worse because of some sort of neediness or something that hasn't come to fruition financially or whatever that might be for you. So maybe a couple of years out, just considering where most people in their early 20s and late 20s are at in life, might really benefit you and make that marriage much more comfortable and therefore much easier to be happy in on a level. Personally, I wish I would have learned that. The first time I got married, I wish I would have given things time to ripen, like is sort of suggested here. 2 years might seem like a really long engagement, but that might be really smart as well for a couple of reasons. But let me go back to that cross sum thing really quickly. And you guys, you can do this with the years around your birthday and come up with all sorts of analysis of this. If you add your birthday's cross sum, which I will definitely devote a masterclass to at some point here for everyone in this group, guys. If you haven't already joined one of my groups and got that training from me, I'll sort that out on a level for you guys so you can all figure out your birth card is what I would call it. But we can very easily do a cross sum on 2017 by doing a sum, 2 plus 0 plus 1 plus 7, adding all of the numbers in the current year together. If we do that, 2 plus 0 is 0. 2, it's just still 2. 0 plus 1, you can tell how good I am at math. 2 plus 1, rather, is 3. Plus 7 gives us 10. So we could also look for an answer by doing a cross sum. Okay. Now, the funny thing is, the cross sum of the next year would not be necessarily 11 if it works out to be 11, as 2 plus 0 plus 1 plus 8 usually does, because that's 3 plus 8, which is 11, right? If it works out to be 11, we can actually cross sum that down to 2, because then 1 plus 1, the numbers that make up the number 11, if it's written out, can be cross summed down to 2. So you see how this works. You don't always know at first glance if you're not excellent at almost instant math calculations, which I certainly am not. I have to, as my students know, if I am ever figuring out a birth card or destiny card or a cross-sum association with a student, it takes me pen and paper, and then I have the student themselves cross-check it, because I do not have a math brain even for simple addition a lot of the time. I think that might be one of the things that you sort of, if you use your intuitive brain as much as I do, if you've done readings for as long as I do, maybe the math skills just sort of get pushed out of the brain. I don't know how that works, but I'm terrible with basic math. But you may not be. But for me, I'd have to go through the numbers. Okay, so 2018 boils down to 2 and 11. 2019, 2 plus 0 plus 1 plus 9 is 12. And that boils down to 3. So you see how this goes. But if you went through enough of them, you'd get a later year. But just as an instant answer that feels pretty right on, I would go with 2019, because there's a 9 right in that number. I think that makes a lot of sense. Either that or the other obvious suggestion that may feel right for you is he about to turn 29? Is he 29? Is there a 9 in his number, or should you wait until there's a 9 in your number? You can kind of play with number analysis that way and use your intuition on a basic level. So that might answer that. And then the other thing here, Lexus, is the 2 questions thing that you saw that you're mentioning down at the bottom of your question there. Absolutely right. A little bit of a different interpretation that I intended, but it may not have been clear. I'm going to be allowing everyone in the group up to 2 of these mini readings every month. So with your permission, Lexus, what I will make a note to remind myself to do is add your second question about Avery's car detailing business, and I'll include that in one of this next week's batches of mini readings, and I'll let you know about when I come up with an answer with that one for you too. Okay, so the next card and reading that we're going to do here is Liz, and we're going to continue now with a group of you guys that's going to end up being group 2 in this week's readings from February 27th to March 4th, 5th or 6th or so on. And with Liz's reading, we are switching from autumn as the suit in the Victorian Tarot to the Herald of Summer. So we have two things here that we didn't see in the last card result going on in the same tarot deck. The summer season is the equivalent in the Victorian Tarot of the Suit of Cups in a regularly named deck of tarot cards. And the cups are the water sign energy. They are to do with emotions and relationships and your happiness and what your deepest self really wants to enjoy life. So all of that is there in more of a watery way with the Suit of Summer here, whereas we had the Suit of Earth, the element of Earth, represented in the last card we saw, which was a pentacle. I'm using that first pentacle card as the introductory reading for everyone's groups this week, because we did a fair amount of introducing the deck there too. So Liz asked, why am I ill? And she has the result here of the Herald of Summer. Now, the heralds in the Victorian Tarot are the equivalent of pages in a regularly named deck. The pages of any suit is the first court card of 4 court cards in a suit. And those are usually named page, knight, queen, king. We see various renamings of those 4 court cards depending on what tarot deck we're using. So here, with the Herald of Summer, we just about have an equivalent to the Page of Cups. Now the pages and heralds, no matter which deck you're working with, they represent mastery of their suit. So here we're dealing with mastery of emotion, mastery of all of the cup issues, which are summer issues in this deck. And what that means is we're mastering emotion here, but because it's specifically a page, a herald, rather than a knight, a queen, and a king, the task here is a page or a herald-like task. This has something to do with your question about why you might be ill. So the Page of Cups, and any page actually, always has to do with not only mastery but also learning, apprenticing to the suit, learning a new way to approach the qualities and energies of the suit at hand. So here we have someone who's very interested in apprenticing to the energies of water, apprenticing to the emotional world. They might be learning new ways to approach emotion and emotional issues and relationships. How does your heart connect to your relationships and your life? How do you feel emotionally? Are you happy? So all of these are things that the Herald is going to help you learn more about, to explore in a new way. Now, usually when there's a page or a herald up, I also say things about approaching whatever is going on with new eyes, approaching your emotional world with new eyes, new vision. Means in part maintaining a beginner's mind, I suppose I should say. To do with what's going on with you emotionally. We can have emotional experiences that are layered and somewhat buried under more emotional experiences, and our whole emotional experience and our emotional set points in life can be sort of seen as an onion with layers and layers and layers that build on each other. So your emotional experience with one thing 5 years ago built on what your next experience was going to be, and your next and your next, and 5 years later you have this onion of experiences that are all in layers. They all built on each other. So sometimes you have to unpeel some layers to really get to what's really going on in an emotional sense at the core of your experience. So bear all of that in mind. And I think that that has a lot to do with your question about why you're ill. There's something here for you to explore and master on an emotional level. that is really tying in to what's going on here for you. Let's move on to Nicole. And guys, the people who I've already given a little bit of a blurb in this group about your card, about your reading, please stick around, because as we go through Nicole and Emily and Sophia and Rachel and Teresa's questions here, I'm going to refer back and add a little bit more depth about your card as we go. If we have another summertime card coming up, or another court card, or another herald, Liz, you're going to receive a deeper level of teaching if you just stick around here. And also for all of you guys, I'm going to say this right now so that when we get to your reading, you know what's going on. If you want to stick around and do the last few readings, stick around for Nicole and Emily and Sophia and Rachel and Teresa in this case. What you're also going to receive, as well as the in-depth just additions as you listen to what I chat about coming up to the meaning of your reading for you, I'm also going to be giving you guys a really reasonably priced way to grab a full 30-minute 10-card reading from me, along with 2 of my best-selling courses. That's going to be something that I'll chat about in the last 6 or 7 minutes of this recording for anyone who's interested in getting a further, deeper reading this week. Okay, let's go on to Nicole. Nicole says, will my son play in the NBA? And the result here is the King of Autumn. So Nicole, we've already talked about autumn, and we've already talked about court cards being mastery cards, and I know you've been a student of mine in a few courses before, so it's lovely to see you back. What a brilliant question. You feel like you have a very physically talented son. And to have the result here of the King of Autumn show up means, of course, that you have the equivalent of King of Pentacles here. This is mastery of the material world. This could be mastery of his body, his physical body, and his capabilities to play in the NPA. It would be hard to find a more well-suited card to come up as a very positive feeling result here. I mean, this feels like it could, in potential, be a yes. Now, we've talked about potentials and likelihoods of outcomes and yes or no questions a bit already, and I'm sure you remember a lot of that from your trainings as well. But I think he does have the potential to be a great athlete. The king is the ultimate masculine energy that we put on mastery and authority. And the king is viewed to be a true expert, a true master of whatever his domain is here. With the domain of autumn here, we see the equivalent to pentacles, the physical realm again. This can also mean things, which obviously something like playing in the NBA would do eventually, that speak to the larger theme here, which is really his goal. Beyond playing in the NBA, are there other ways that you could master or fulfill a King of Autumn or King of Pentacles card prediction? Yeah, anything that will give him that ultimate success, massive power, success, expertise, mastery in the field of his physical experience in the world with his body is at play here. This may very well often also mean financial affluence, abundance, all of that stuff may be a big part of the motivation to play in the NBA for him. That physical domain is what's going on here. So I think that's a pretty great answer there, Nicole. Hope that's helpful to you and explains a bit about why that's happening. Emily says, will my father-in-law be at peace? And your result is another autumn card, another pentacle, but here we have the ace. Now the aces are the equivalent of 1. The number 1 in the suit is often represented as the ace. And so with a 1, with an ace, we see potential, we see new beginning. And that's really what's important here. And interestingly enough, very often when, I don't know for sure if your father-in-law has passed over, but this is the sort of question people ask after a death a lot of the time too. And it's just uncanny how many times someone asks, is someone okay who's passed over, or is he at peace? And the answer comes up as a number that talks about rebalancing or new beginnings. and that to me means yes. Here we have new beginning represented with the ace of autumn, physical existence. So there's some physical new beginning that's going to be happening for your father. And the upright card, very positive card here, speaking of material potential and new beginnings, would say yes. The answer here looks to be yes, your father-in-law is at peace or will be at peace. Sophia, should I apply for this beauty apprentice? Something is telling me to do it. Well, you've got another autumn card that's come up here. And the answer here, with the Two of Autumn in place, really seems to be a positive one, but what it's going to be saying here is it's going to be a lot on your plate to apply for this beauty apprenticeship. The Two of Autumn, or the Two of Pentacles, usually speaks of keeping a lot of things in motion at the same time, and we see that very clearly here with this old man fairy balancing. They look like hazelnuts, and he's got a hazelnut tree behind him, I think. And he's on a penny farthing bicycle. He doesn't have use of his hands because his hands are so full with these hazelnuts. And there's a little mouse who's trying to catch a couple that have fallen. Maybe the mouse is helping him, maybe the mouse is catching them for himself. But there's a lot of things in motion going on in this card. In a normal Two of Pentacles deck, we usually see a juggler. And he's juggling pentacles, usually, and they appear on the image in a shape that then is highlighted by an infinity symbol, sort of a figure eight, lemniscate thing, sort of joining up the two pentacles. So we kind of see that a little bit here too, in the shape of the penny farthing and the shape of the acorn, the hazelnuts in his hands. And it's really evident that the theme here is the same as the original, which is juggling a lot in a very physical way. So it's a very positive card. It's probably a yes if something is telling you to do it, for sure. The deeper answer here is yes, but really be mindful of how much this is being put on your plate, how busy this is going to get you, and how organized and really calm you need to be with the process of all of that in order to pull through this apprenticeship with flying colors, with your sanity intact. So it's a very positive card. It's a low number card, which would be a great one for anybody embarking on an apprenticeship. It does mean everything about fresh starts and new beginnings, but now we're adding something to that. In terms of the apprenticeship and what that means to take that on. So I hope that's helpful, Sophia. Rachel asks, what do I need to work on in order to help bring in a healthy, grounded, happy relationship into my life? And Rachel, this is our first Major Arcana card. For those of you who I've been reading for in Group 2 so far, I think this is our group's first Major Arcana card. Now the number 11 on this Major Arcana card, the X and the I down there is Roman numeral 11, relates to the 2 that we've already discussed. It relates to the Herald that we've already discussed as well, because in terms of the Minor Arcana, which the rest of you guys, your cards were minor cards so far, the 2 and the 11 relate number-wise to the number 11 of the Major Arcana, and I will talk a little bit about that as I discuss this card. In this deck, we are calling the number 11 card of the Major Arcana the Magistrate. Now, in a regular deck of cards, this card is often called Justice. And there are some themes here symbolically that are a little bit different from a regular Justice card. I'll talk about them in a minute. Justice traditionally, and this is definitely the same for this card, represents balanced, harmonious, good judgment, seeing the truth of something in a fair and balanced way for everyone. And the bigger truth, not a small truth, but like the big ultimate reality of a situation. And working on managing that in a way that brings fairness and balance and harmony to all parties for their own good. These are all themes that Justice carried. A little bit more about this major card versus the minor card. The major cards are the big deal cards in the tarot. I think I might have touched on that earlier. The minor cards, for those of you who had a minor card, I will add this in case you know I didn't talk about it. I can't remember exactly what I talked about in the introduction of this, but the minor cards are more everyday, chopping wood, carrying water sort of themes. They're things that I am confident when someone comes up with a minor card, they'll be able to handle, but it might be one of those things that feels very important today, but you know, today's importance on that is the appropriate place to put how much you think about a minor issue overall in your life. The major cards, when they come up, these are bigger issues that might be more sustaining and maybe more important or more prioritized for you on some sort of soul awareness level. So Rachel, this is kind of a big deal card, a major arcana. There's only 22 of these in the whole deck of 78 cards. There's 56 of the minor cards. So fairness, balance, the difference here, let me talk about how this relates to the two really quickly. We had the two, juggling of pentacles, come up in this group. The juggling is to keep things that are in motion in balance in the physical domain of your own personal life. It's going to carry, though, themes of the 11, because 2 is really what 11 cross sums down to. If we saw the number 11 in our numbers, the 1 and the 1 of 11, and we took the cross sum of that, 1 plus 1, we'd get 2 again, right? So the cross sum of 11 is 2. This means in the major arcana that the 11 relates to the number 2 major arcana, which is the High Priestess. In the minor cards, we see the themes of meetings, jugglings, balancings, decision-making being addressed in all of the number 2s of the minor suits. And this shows us the common theme here between the 11 and the 2 as one of finding that balance. Now the magistrate has to find higher order balances in a legal way with court judgments and things being done here. So if there's any kind of actual court stuff going on, or legal stuff, or financial stuff, justice or the magistrate will come up to say, these are ways that you are balancing in your life right now. So that might be something to work on if any of that exists. If not, then this is probably talking about finding good judgment, like we talked about before, that feels fair and balanced to all parties. And there's an aspect of that that's true for the 2s as well. The Herald, I talked about this being a card to think about in terms of the pages and the heralds of each deck too, because the herald or the page comes after the 10. It's the first court card after the 10, so it is actually a number 11 also. The magistrate traditionally relates more to the minor arcana suit of swords than any other of the suits. So that's different from everyone who's had summer and autumn, which are water and pentacle cards come up so far. But the reason there is this is mind, this is decision making on a level, right? There's a sword aspect to that because there's an air element aspect to that. So good communication that results in fair and balanced outcomes for everyone without too much emotional stuff getting in the way of that fair and balanced judgment. That's really a big part of the magistrate energy. How this guy differs from a regular justice card, usually we see the judge of justice as the justice figure herself. She's got a sword uplifted and balance scales in the other hand, a sword in one hand, uplifted usually, scales in the other hand. And usually she's blindfolded and she's sitting on a seat that she looks to be presiding and offering judgment from. It looks to be in the middle of the courthouse or something. This doesn't look like it's in the middle of the courthouse, does it? And he's barefoot, he doesn't have scales, he doesn't have any of the symbology. He's got these crimson flowers behind him, And he's sitting down, he's got all these scrolls around him. Now, in this deck, scrolls are swords. They replace swords with scrolls in the Victorian Tower deck. So there's that connection with that minor arcana suit, just represented in a different way. And he seems to be thinking. He seems to be thinking in a peaceful little corner of a garden somewhere, sitting in earth. His bare feet are connecting, perhaps, with the ground beneath him, the earth beneath him. And so this magistrate seems to be very grounded, and that's interesting because you use the word grounded in your question as being very important. So you might want to think about how this guy, who has a lot of decisions to make for everyone's best interest, might get more grounded in very physical ways. That's a suggestion that might be here with the bare feet touching the ground in a very physical way for you. And finding peace away from the circus of a court scene or something that is more public in nature, and finding time to come to your best judgment on your own in the peace and quiet of somewhere like a garden or somewhere that feels peaceful and grounded like that. Look at your environment like this magistrate is doing and seeing if you can work with that any. Might really be good too. And finally, let's have a look here at Teresa's reading. How can I best prepare for my upcoming solar return next week? Teresa, since you've put this in, your solar return has probably already happened, because at time of recording this, due to technical difficulties this week and last, which I think I finally mastered, but we are on Saturday already, so happy birthday. I know your birthday was probably sometime this week. Wow, you've got Death showing up as your card. So here's another Major Arcana card. It's numbered 13. The only card that's really between the Magistrate in this deck and Death is the Hanged Man card, number 12. So we've got the same row of the Major Arcana here for those of you who have studied the Major Arcana cards in some of my more in-depth trainings with me, as I know Nicole and Teresa probably have in this group, for sure. I recognize them. But the Death card represents a closing, perhaps a little bit of a grieving, an honoring. Here we see little fairies gathered around in what looks to be a little funeral scene. They're saying goodbye to somebody who has left them and left this life that they shared with them. And we see this as a wintry sort of scene, but with evergreen, holly and berries. In this scene. So there's actually a lot of color in this scene, even though it's a wintertime scene. Things die in the winter, so that's there. So I'm not entirely sure what we were talking about in your larger reading, Teresa, but I know you've had a larger reading, and we were talking about a lot of closing periods and a property that was a concern because of closings that are happening in your family, closings, endings. This is all symbolically represented by quote-unquote death, right? Real deaths and symbolic deaths, and deaths of circumstances and ways of life that might come to an end to make way for something new to happen. And I think here I'm actually echoing a theme that we have talked about, Teresa, before, which is having to put some finality and some closing in place so that you are freed up energetically to move forward with new projects, and finding ways that things in your life are working for you in new ways happens after this closing, after this death. What's suggested here is at this time, your birthday week, your solar return, the focus is, what do I need to put behind me? And you might need to have a gratitude ceremony or a closing ceremony or even a little funeral or some sort of gathering where people who might also be needing closure with something have an opportunity to participate in that in almost like a ceremonial sort of way. That's sort of what this card feels like to me. So I don't know if that feels appropriate for you, Teresa, but very interesting that you got a Major Arcana result here. In this little group, we had two major cards and the minor focuses were really interesting too. Now, for those of you who are interested in getting a more complete 30-minute reading from me and those two courses, I'm going to switch over now and just close up with a little bit more about what I have for you guys this week if you want to do more with me. So thank you again so much for giving me the honor and privilege of practicing my intuitive tarot reading and teaching skills with you this week. And this week for all of my students, I actually have a special offer that I'd like to spend a little bit of time introducing to you now. Now, we've done a little bit of tarot basics while we've been learning together this week already. You've probably already at this point got a grasp on the basics of the suits and the elements that are connected to those suits, and sometimes the seasons and other aspects energetically that are connected to the four suits of the tarot. We've chatted a little bit about major arcana cards, and we've chatted a little bit about the difference between major cards and minor cards and what all of the different numbers possibly mean. So what we've been exploring already takes you enough into the practice and the study of tarot that you're ready for more in-depth work. And with what you have in place right now and a couple of other bonus courses that I'll explain in a little while here, I want to invite you to possibly consider joining us for our Advanced Tarot 201 class this week, because I think with everything that you've got already, I can get you up to speed pretty quickly here and have you feel very comfortable joining even an Advanced Tarot class like this one. This is just Advanced Tarot 201. It's only a step up from some very basic foundational elements that you're already familiar with. You'll be able to jump in for that reason fairly easily. But the special thing about this particular Advanced Tarot course is that it is limited to just 10 of you this week. Now, how we're going to monitor that is as soon as we've got 10 sign-ups this week, we'll be at our limit, and we'll be taking a little buy now button that you might see underneath this video. If you scroll down the screen a bit, you'll see a buy now button if there's one of these 10 spots available. Now, in particular, what I want to emphasize about why it's really important that I can only have 10 people do this program with us is that each and every one of the 10 of you that sign up earliest this week are going to get included, along with the Advanced Tarot 201 sessions, you're going to get a complete 30-minute more in-depth reading from me, where we're going to be doing a Celtic cross reading together. So here in the sessions that we've had time to do in our free group this week, you have access to a mini reading, what we call a mini reading, where I just draw one card and I give you a little bit about that card, that one card based on a one sentence question. When you work with us as one of our 10 mastery level students in this course, you get a lot more out of the reading here. Not only is it a full 30 minutes dedicated to you, but in those 30 minutes we're going to be doing the Celtic cross spread, which is a 10 card spread. It's a great, very comprehensive reading that's going to give you a big picture and a lot more detail about something that you would like to take a bit more of an involved look at together with us. So all in all, the other thing that's available to you here that will make sure you feel very comfortable with if you want to go through these 10 sessions, not just yours but the other 9 as well, is that along with really up close and personal experience with the tarot, once you get those 10 sessions, you're going to have the opportunity to practice reading right along with me. While I do these readings, while I interpret these 10 readings that are included as these 10 practice sessions, you get the experience pretty much of looking over my shoulder while I do these readings. So I'll be explaining a lot of more in-depth, very specific patterns and associations and interpretations that I'm making. I'll be explaining all of that to you in a very real life experience way by doing 10 sessions where you're just looking over the shoulders, getting the experience of doing those readings. Here we are now on a screen where I'm going to spend a little bit of time on the bonus course that you guys are all getting if you sign up for Advanced Tarot 201, if you sign up to be one of these 10 master students that gets a 30-minute Celtic cross spread reading from me. What you're also going to get is a complete Tarot for Beginners bonus course from me. This bonus course comes with an 80-page Tarot Healing Affirmation Guidebook that you might have noticed me using during the mini readings and during the classes this week. So you'll have seen that there's a tarot card and then a separate affirmation for each of those tarot cards. Along with that 80-page guidebook, the Tarot Healing Affirmation Guidebook, you get a 16-part video-based class called Tarot for Beginners. It's about 14 hours in length overall. So I originally designed the Tarot for Beginners course as a course that people could go through in about the span of time of as a weekend intensive workshop. But of course, you are going to have lifetime access and instant access to both of these courses, but all of the Tarot for Beginners classes will be available for you right away. They'll be available for you whenever you want to go through that class. You don't have to go through Tarot for Beginners in order to go through the Advanced Tarot 201 course, but it could really bring your level of understanding in the course to a much deeper level if you do have the interest there. If not, what I wanted to ensure for all of you was whether or not the bonus feels like a good move for you today. What I can promise you when you sign up as one of our 10 advanced students here for the Advanced Tarot 201 intensive master course is that 30-minute reading in of itself is going to be a stellar value for you here. Along with the advanced course and the beginner's course in tarot, overall you're getting over $150 worth of course and class material here for the price of just $78, and then the 30-minute reading that essentially is yours specifically for you also carries about a $200 value. So all in all, over $350 worth of courses, classes, and that reading session is yours today for just the low price of $78. Why 78? Well, I've been talking to you for quite a while now about the 78 cards of the tarot. So as an introductory special offer to go to this very deep level with me, I thought 78 felt like an appropriate number. And I just wanted to give you guys a great discount. So thank you again for joining me for your readings and for the class this week. And I'll see you again in the group later on this week. Take care now. Bye.